We will now move on to your explanation of how you spent your time in the judiciary.
Silambe na tenten na dame do wala nyindi ko akenora nyaadi le inata ni la ko nyin tentendi no nyaadi le kaddo ko kenin kiti bundala fannala.
After you were appointed as a magistrate and posted to the Banjul Magistrates Court,
Briye tombon keke magistrate o memu kitindir lade inata ne samba Banjul la kitindir bundato memu Banjul Magistrates Court.
You were unceremoniously dismissed.
Ita ye bondi dalila taka.
And then reinstated
inata ne murundi nan do ko la kotenke
by the supreme law of the council.
Wala council law loi sembo mabati.
And then you were moved.
Inata ne saundi.
Can you tell us where you went to next and then give us some examples of judicial interference serving as a magistrate in those jurisdictions that you presided over?
Silang hanin kabi faisa fona nyebiri bondi je inara ne samba minto le fona hanin kabi fona biri samba odingira nyento ila dabulo kitio bunda nyinda fonna la fona akeno da nyali andu ka kenyadi le.
Apart from judicial interference, can you tell us if there were any other people, institutions, or elements in the system that were at play in terms of the activity or the roles that they played in the areas that you went to entrench Jammeh into power?
Ninga bota judiciary la dabulo ke dabulo menda fo bunda dol fana mbejele me ya lonko wol fana dabulo ta ko nyin kono le pour ka jaya Jammeh makoy ani ila do ko nyin kono pour ka ya Jammeh la nidia ko nyin ko timmandi aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's okay, thank you so much. I was next transferred to Mansakonko. And I was traveling magistrate covering LRD and North Bank, that is Lower River Division and North Bank Division.
Yo adun teketa mo kitindirlalti menkatani na krewan tundo ni mansa konko tundo ntele marta bela nkatani na kitolla.
All right. Before I come to issues pertaining to trials before the court,
janimbi na kulu meni alonko wolle tilinta kulu la men keta kiti kulti kiti bundala.
If you ask about institutions and individuals and organizations that capacitize Jammeh,
yenyinka roke kabrim mol bundalu doku bundalu ni mfana kotengulu meni alonko wolle Jammeh sembentu ya.
I'll talk about the police first.
Mbe police lela kumo fana follow.
They had an Inspector General of Police
ye
at the
moso
time.
Wotembo ye moso to memu police la kuntonkoti Inspector General.
The late FRI Jammeh.
Tala FRI Jammeh.
I'm sorry to say, but he was a most irresponsible person.
Ali haketu mbafo la bari aketa moleti meya lonko ala duko sambanya jenketa bakele nungotumo.
FRI would instruct the police to charge, arrest, detain, and charge any person who has been reported to him to be an opposition sympathizer.
FRI le kanyin kangodi ko mo womondi niya kibaro futandia makomu opposition oleti meya lonka mantra ya Jammeh pati wakono asafo ya ala muta aliya kitindi aliya sorong.
I'll give you a case in point in Farafenye whilst I was there.
Mbe misali kilin dile la kuoketa nyami mfarafenye wotumo mbije.
And another incident in Mansakonko.
Anin kudo fananata ke Mansakonko.
There was a complaint lodged by one Tafadiba from Farafenye.
Ikafo mole Tafadiba menata wasi kula membo ta Farafenye.
He went to the police station.
Atata police station auto.
And he told the police that his own uncle
has
gone to his compound.
Apparently,
the uncle had been went to Jumansar, if I am not mistaken. He was staying in Farafenye, but he went to Jumansar for a mission. One of the ladies, one of the natives of the village gave him money to give to her daughter who was then attending school in Farafenye but was staying in Tafa's compound.
awo kodo asa samba adingoye muso kodo diatela pura samba adingoye me yalon ko be farafenye tafala korda kono abira bar dindu nyimbita kan karambungol to.
Money was for purchase of school uniform for the girl.
Sunkuto nying anyanta kodo nying anyanta sanna uniform olela karambung uniform.
This gentleman went to deliver that money to the daughter in Tafa's compound.
Nying ke utata kodo le dandang sunkuto nyi ye tafala korda kono.
Soon as Tafa saw him,
Brin Tafayo mari je drong.
He confronted him. He asked him, "I don't belong to the same party with you. Why are you coming inside my compound?" He assaulted the uncle.
Kumaka men fo wolem nyindi kontanite mantara party killing. Muna na silang ibedun na suokono. O kango kandrong aboita o keo kanje.
What party did Tafa belong to?
Tafa was a member of July 22nd and APRC.
Tafa mu July 22nd kafudingoleti aning APRC.
So he has attacked the uncle, but that time the uncle had a long sickness and was just recovering.
Ataboita barin kanjele ado barin na moti da membo in kanwonya andu we atara komanto nu we sasa jansoto bari abefisia kanu ngotilo lukono.
When the uncle realized that this situation was getting out of hands, he left the compound and Tafa met him in the streets and assaulted him there.
Birim baringo yaje ko nyin cooperate kala bulufa quality de bitum baringo findita suokono atata mbeddo kan bari Tafa manna dangoto ay baringo bayindi mbeddo kan kote ka atata boyin kanje.
After assaulting him, he went to the police and informed the police by himself.
Birate yo boyin kan foka pare ate fangole nata muru kata police ka kibaro di police la ko.
Said this man from the UDP came to my house and I assaulted him.
Ko nyimmari mu UDP kolti de anata na suokono nga boyin kan.
He told the police that he assaulted the man.
Ate fango nyine fo police ole ko ka atele yo mari boyin kan.
But because I don't belong to the same party with him, I want you to charge him, and if you don't charge him, I'll call the IG and inform him, and he'll get you dismissed.
Ando ay nyina fo police ole ko ntele nga boyin kande bari nali manyi muta aliya charge mbe IG kilila andu mbafala IG e pura ya telu baydo kola.
And thereon he called FRI and informed him that he must tell his officers in Farafenni to charge the uncle.
Andu wonoto lenga manda woto ay FRI kumandi telefono to ka ko nyin sata we ka fayen ko nyim police men fele Farafenni jang ko nyin ketatenne adu e nyanta silota la nyim mari kamale.
FRI was not interested also in knowing the truth of the matter. He directly instructed Inspector Seka to charge the uncle.
FRI man kunyinin ka ko keta nyaming amalla fi fan ko nyi yesata ye wonoto la nga Inspector Seka kumandi ka fo yen ko ali nyin kendi mutali ya charge.
So no investigations were conducted.
No investigation whatsoever, and that was a pattern that was ongoing when FRI was Inspector General of Police.
Adu nyinin kar manke kisir manke akoto adu mu kuleti me yalonko wala be kekan dung di sinya jama wato men FRI be Inspector General ya la police.
The uncle was charged and was brought before me in Farafenni.
Ye baringo nyemuta ya tumi ya natinte nyati lungu la Farafenni kiti bundala.
To my surprise, Tafa stood before the court after he was sworn in the Quran. He narrated the absolute truth that he was the one who assaulted the uncle.
Birinyin ko futata kiti bundala. Tafa nata lo kiti bundala. Akitante tere makuality. Ay to nyale fo de akko aktele ye abarim fango boyin kan aya be sata ko be keta nyaming.
I was stunned.
Nyin ketante ye tere makubati.
And he told the police that if they don't charge him, he was going to call the IG and inform him, and they were going to be dismissed.
Ando ay nyim fanam fojele ko atele ko police oli ali nyin charge. Nali ma tumi ka kula kan mbe IG kumandila andu ninga IG kumandi ibatelu be bailale.
What was the uncle charged with?
And criminal trespass.
Baringo nyi ya tumi nyina la ko atele boyin kandiroke andu ay tonyandiro leke.
I was so annoyed about it. At the end of his testimony, I told him, I said, I'll make an order for you to be in attendance in this trial every day of the case.
Konyi yente fango kamfale fo ayakendi brate bandi satarola nka bitumbe sarto londila ite fango be kala moleti lolu ndingi be mabela le nyin kitola.
So he became afraid.
Wotumole manata sila.
He contacted the office of the president.
Ay president la office ay komandiro kije.
And Jammeh had the temerity to dispatch 2 members of cabinet.
Jamenata cabinet wolem alifalu men ya lonko wolle marata banko kullo sambola ay mofula kinang.
It was Major Bojang then, who was the Interior Minister.
Utumo Major Bojang atolo minister ti memmarta banko kan kunya lula.
Kaba Bajo, I think Lamin Kaba was then at the local government ministry.
Anin Lamin Kaba Bajo ngamera utumo beman sakundari ngule la bundala.
To come to Farafenni to try to investigate what was the issue.
Proliena Farafenni kana ko kisi menketa.
So there was too much. There was a climate of impunity that was being enjoyed by July 22nd members.
Wotembo July 22nd kafudingulu tanabuka kela. Ye kuokundinke fem buka boje wo kobe warali wo sembo be warali nungo tumo.
And I must also take this opportunity to reveal this as a fact.
Andum ndefana mbenyi silo tala ko wo mu ku sotoringo letinu menketa.
That the best corps of the Gambia Police Force were dismissed during the tenure of FRI Jammeh as Inspector General of Police.
Ko wato wo tembo FRI Jammeh abe IG ala tumomen wo tumole ye Gambia Police kendolu Gambia Police dinkendolu meneketa dokula kendoluti yewlu be bay police wo tumole FRI be IG ala tumomen.
Even when the British High Commission offered the Gambia government a package to be able to maintain the image and the integrity and standards at the police by offering training opportunities to the police.
Andu wotembo fango aninku benta British or England Banco ila High Commission bunda membe Gambia. I wulita purka makwero di police olla purka police bunda ke karandi ka kunyimalu sababu nyimalu futandi police do ku bunda to me ya lonko asike police bunda la tanya toti.
The large number of police officers who were trained.
Police kendol police jama men ya lonko yi karandi yi londi la do ko la
able to continue the good work of the police following any change of government. We are all dismissed from the service.
Andu keta moluti men keta do ko la luti wakilta isaita puruka tenten do ko la bari wo tembo lemo mo kendolu be ye be by police.
Do you know on what grounds they were dismissed?
Yala na ye bay mundali lelakang.
You will be surprised that even when files are handed over to the police to investigate,
Nimbekeletere makote hani failolu niye di polisola purka foye alinyin kukari kisi.
when they investigate and stumble on evidence,
Niye kisi roke tata sele kuka memu sede kuoti.
they can be sacked for writing the right report about what transpired.
Nite ye tonya safe kuo keta nyaming yo safe. Isi baino wadalilo fonkane kafo ete tonya le safe.
The best corps of the investigators of the Gambia Police Force were sacked merely because they have been assigned to investigate and they have, between themselves and God, written what they have been able to uncover. They have written the right story, what they have been able to uncover in the case of the investigation. But for doing the right thing, they were sacked.
Gambia la police do ku bundala. Menu karanta keta kisi ro lonna no la luti. Ni ebula kisi ro la. Hanufo ye bandi. Ye kuo safe la kisi ro ye kuo men wanyari. Andunga tata ke tonya ku sotoringoleti. Ibe mari baila. Kafoite ye tonya le safe. Ike bayo dalilo le fangokang. Ayasa wo tembo Gambia la police kendolu. Meni ye londo soto kisi ro ni police do kuoto. Ye be bayo tumole.
It reached a point when you want to when you engage the CID to look, to investigate any matter, many of them will tell you, well, I don't want to get involved.
Otemba tatale fang silang fo. Akita silanya kuoti kullo polisol fang la karola ikafo mene CID. Niye bula kisi rola ikalole keneba to ikafo malla finda bula la nyinto.
Okay, let me go back to Mansakonko.
But ngamuru Mansakonko.
Before we go there, Mr. Toure, I know that we've been talking a lot about judicial interference and the fact that the integrity of the judiciary is at stake, but I think from what you're saying, it was not only the judiciary, but the Gambia Police Force as well had its own independence, because as police officers, they were required to be independent in functioning. That was also at stake, and their whole integrity was also something that had also been
not only the
down.
Gambia Police Force, let me also take this opportunity to highlight this. Even the Ministry of Justice
hana manke police da mantide mbenyin silo fanantala kanyim banke hani minister bunda memmarta tilingu nin kitola ako futata je.
I remember when Alaji Marong, Hausun Semekajane, and Esafal were in the office in the Ministry of Justice.
Ngakilo bakang Alaji Marong, Hausun Semekajane, and Esafal, utumo ebebe udu kuola ubundala.
Can you describe these individuals you just mentioned?
Alaji is a trained barrister. He was my senior about 2 years in the university.
Alaji mu baristal tikiti ndirlalom andu ngakaranta le adunna nyaton kole mu akaranta university olto.
Himself and Hecho were 2 years ahead of me, and Esafal was 1 year ahead of me.
Atening Hecho ye sanji fula le kente nya jannimbina adung Esafal we sanji kiline kente nya je jannimbina.
I'm referring to the lead counsel here in the TRRC.
Mbe lead counsel le mamenka molu diamundi TRRC jamfango.
They all had a stint of career in the Ministry of Justice.
Selbeye wuchedo kule nung minister bunda la men marta tilingu nin kito la Gambia jang.
There were moments when files were assigned to them and they were asked to write opinion.
Adung wato lu sotonta ika failo lu kinang iye ka foyonko ite nyin koje nyaming ilangani yo safeje.
I remember the case involving the Imam of Brikama, TOURAY.
Nakilo be kuo kang me yalon ko wole kita Brikama alimamu la kesti ikafome Alhaji TOURAY.
That was an empty file.
Wo mu file kolongoleti.
They wanted Mr. Marong to justify pressing of charges against him, and he refused.
Lafta puru Mr. Maro ye tumirolu safe ke lawo alimamo kang adu tumo wala file kolong le defenda kono bari lafta Mr. Maron safe rindila kolu la pur ka tumi ka dundi bari Mr. Maron ye bang.
And when these people discovered that it was press or that was going to be the yardstick for pressing charges against innocent people, majority of them left the Ministry of Justice.
Mojama benyil kononka menu foteng birina ataje ko tonton diro ke tonton ke bula kola meni alonko we mudewundi koleti ke dundi kolu to menu manke kutilindi nguleti me yalonko e si tamande minister bunda la menu marta tilingu kitola wodalilo le ya sabu wairi mam pare bula la ukruya kono ye fonyo ye do ko bula.
And this was what created a gap in the Ministry of Justice.
Wonata kene balek dundi minister bunda la men marta tilingu kitola.
It was later filled by Nigerians.
Me yalonko biro botala lom inata Nigeriano lunati ke dundi o palasoto.
And what is important to note, Mr. TOURAY, is that despite the fact that we have so many numerous examples of people who actually went by what Jammeh wanted, and they were used by Jammeh, but some people actually defied him and either resigned or were able to be independent.
Certainly, there were distinguished Gambians. These people I'm talking about stood by the virtue and the values of the law.
Tonyala, Gambia din kendo lu sotontale wotumo, meni alonko, imam pare dunna kuruya kono, andu imam pare jamme fasala, fania kang. Ilota, yela tonya no masata, ayakendi, dolie do ko bula, ye fanyo, dolu ye banko bula, dolu hani manta, bari ye fanyo do ko la, ye fansun do ko luta, e kontinete e fansun do ko lula.
Let me also take this opportunity to mention the judiciary in the High Court at that time.
Mbenyim fanam fala utumo kitindir bunda la sako bunda menketa kiti bunda santon court High Court.
I would speak about one of our judges who is now in the Supreme Court.
Mbenna ititela kilim fola menyalon ko nyentembeng abe kiti bunda ba to Supreme Court.
And that is Justice Mam Yasin C.
Wolem Justice Mam Yasin C.
The state could not use her to take advantage of innocent Gambians.
Mansakunda ma adundino ka dokundi wala ka force puru ka tilimbalia tamandi Gambian ko lukang.
3 times her promotion to the Court of Appeal was due. They ignored her.
Sinya saba inyanta kala palaso la fa praita kiti bunda santon koto ba waire ambukasong tilimbalia ko lutamandila ika bali palaso nyina sinya saba.
She had to resign and later she picked a Commonwealth appointment and went to Sierra Leone.
Wodalilo le asabu afana ye fanyo do ko la resign ta bari alana ta mako ikafasa anata Commonwealth la palaso soto wuli do ko diala ya samba Sierra Leone.
And can you tell us why she was sidelined?
Well, Well, of course, it was obvious that matters pertaining to protection and enforcement of fundamental rights, especially bail applications, she would always grant bail because that was a period when bail was available even for capital offenses like murder.
Abenda watu lefe watu me yalonko. Na luani sartolu belari nyamin. Isi molu bail no le hani men yalonko fango ye mo fake. Bari ni hani luwa ye muta ni wati sita ise bail no le ye bula. Yo bari wo tembo wole buka keno ando atamu mole time yalonko. Puruka o tilimbali yako lutamandi atema mparedu na wol kono.
And at that time, who was responsible for promoting judges?
Wato la jumal be marlin num pour ka nyinkiti tela sandon kol nyinkela makamol lafa.
Well, principally it was the Office of the Chief Justice. They would recommend for promotion, and the President will exercise his powers under the Constitution to promote, to appoint you to the Court of Appeal.
Odumo Chief Justice la office wole ka saferoke pour minimmen na palaso nyandatala bitun nyato bitu otumo ni o mari ni Chief Justice yo saferoke bitun President la office ole kana akuo sembentu ya pour kawo palaso di o mari la.
So this was an appointment that the President had direct power over?
Yes.
Ota munta council ka nyi mu palaso ti me yalon ko oto President ole ka kango bambandi ka timmandi sedo ko ha.
We've also talked about the term mercenary judges has been used very often in the TRRC, especially within this particular investigative theme.
Ndiamu da fanna la fana surtout waro men ya lon ko ke muna fanni kidi te la ba fala men mercenary judges jojol me ya lon ko ke jole na ku ke me ya lon ko be mansa dronne abetar la diar mansale.
And I believe the notion that most people have about mercenary judges is that they're either Nigerian judges or more generally foreign judges who are not local to our community.
And njikira nyina jama ni mol ya memu mercenary judges jama men ka mira nya wala Nigerian jojol lem waranto ka ke luntangol den me ko bantal e bota banku dol le kan bari bo ken na jam banku dingol.
Would you use that term to describe some of our Gambian born inbred judges?
Fay bo to sifa kino e bolo kumanda na Gambia dingol la men ya lon ko be sirin be joji ala ke kan e be kumanda to sifa kino fana na la ba.
Okay, let me disabuse the minds of the listeners.
Mbatu nganyin kobo la moir la luye nyoto ka seneyandi ya long isondomol kono.
We had foreign judges who came from Nigeria and Ghana
Nigeria and Ghana
who rendered excellent, impeccable service to this nation. They were noble ambassadors of their countries. And the judgments that they have rendered in this jurisdiction will stand the test of time.
Fojal nim faw lua ya fo nyamin silo ya fo nyamin ye kito lutamandi wala nyama.
Mercenary judges were judges who were appointed on contract by the government.
Mercenary jojo lumenu ke fote jojo lumenu kado ko ke kodo kan wulumu molleti men yalan ko man sakunda le wulu tombong ifay.
I am referring to the foreign elements of the mercenary judges.
Wala mnyinti luntang kitindir la lumenu ka fo mercenary judges men yalan ko e kado ko ke kodo le kan mbewol lemade.
But there were Gambians who failed the expectation of the profession. Gambian judges. I'll mention 3 matters which I personally handled. They were all being handled by one single person. And I'll write his name for you. First was the case involving 2 Iraqi nationals.
And Mr. Toure, I believe we are now jumping into your career as a private legal practitioner.
Yes, these observations actually I had when I came into private practice, but I'll get back to Mansakonko.
No problem.
Around 2003 or thereabout.
2003 ma fangola wala wo tumola.
That was following the bombing of the World Trade Center.
Munta ye bomolu fay dunia bela julaya korda bato tumo men America ka fadame World Trade Center dol ka fay 9/11.
2 Iraqi nationals who were also British citizens.
Me ya lonko Iraq banku dimfula me ya lonko ye Angalder banku dia kaytolu soto
Were arrested by the British police in London.
Between England police ol yolu muta London sate okono.
Their lawyers made representation as to why they will be arrested and detained. The British police told them, frankly, we have nothing against them. We have no evidence. We're only doing so on account of cooperation with our sisters across the Atlantic, that is from the FBI.
Biri ol muta ol fanali dalila nyininka ke munan na ibe mutala. Bari England police ol nyine foyen ko. Ntel manku soto ali kamma mantu mir soto ali kamma bari ntel be nyim menke kanteng amunta kanindiro le meya lonko. Ndoku nyolu nimmenu mudoku façon kilingoti menu be Atlantic fankaso karadola dunia bunda me ba fly FBI wolle America la kullo kisikisir bundati wolle fanale la kangole nyintintel ba ke kangole kang.
So they released them.
Bitung wotumolem inata o mo fulolu bula.
But nonetheless,
bari wo nyawnyandi nyama
informed the FBI that these people are on their way to Banjul, the Gambia.
Ye nyina fo FBI menu America la kullo kisikisir lalti konyi mo fulolu ibe silole kay bita kan Gambia le.
So if you cannot arrest them here in London, allow them to reach Banjul where you can pick them without any problem.
Nalte mutanola London jang ali bula yeta hanfo ye dun Gambia ni dun ta Gambia dorong alibe mutanola jele kokundinte bolaje.
The FBI contacted the authorities in Banjul, and upon their arrival at Yundum International Airport, they were arrested.
FBI yoli nyaton kolu kumande Gambia jang kawokumo foye birinyi mo fulolu futata kuluntila jidula to dorong Yundum tap ye mutaje.
They were arrested by the authorities in the Gambia.
By the NIA here, yes.
Bankola NIA ole muta.
Then I received a call from the Amnesty International desk officer for the Gambia.
Amnesty International ila dokula memmarta Gambia kolula wole natante kumandi telefonoto.
Asking if I would be able to handle these matters.
Kanyinin ka fodu mbe ko tamandi nolale.
Who was that person?
It's a lady, I can't remember her name now.
Musole mun hakilo tato mutanola saying.
I said I don't have any hesitation. If I have instruction from the members of the family, I'll take the case.
Nkaye mini te okoto ninga kangosoto kabonyi molu la badi ngolu bulu mba ko talale.
After a week or so, I received a call from Baghdad.
Birin lo kun kilin nyon tambita nga kumandiro soto membota Baghdad sate oto.
This was a wife to one of the brothers who called me expressing concern and if I could assist the family. I said, yes, I don't have any problem.
Nyimmo me yang kumandi teng amunta ye menu muta teng kilindo koto mala muso wala yang kumandi wonya abe wasi kan nyin kumolu fonyi nka ente o ke mini tente la karola nsa ko tanole.
So I filed a habeas corpus application before the High Court.
Utumolo ngasaferoke kanindir bambandingo ke kanindir kolango nyilla ko la ko puru nyante bulalale ngako nyinki High Court.
Kindly explain for the purposes of the lay people what a habeas corpus application is.
Jef faram fansi mole ban pour mol me yalon ko ban karang nyim file sifa nyim file habeas case yos.
Habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is a power vested in the High Court.
Habeas corpus musembeleti membe High Court kitibunda bala,
which is is ordering the detaining authorities to bring the body of the person who is a subject of detention.
Puru mene yalon ko lebe mararin ko law kitibundala isimonati kala ko banke me yalon ko lebe mutoko no itella karola.
Yes, it's habeas corpus, bring him dead or alive, but it's the body that we want.
Amari abe baluring abe faring afureo wala baluring ala fintindinang alianati.
The reason
namari fatafang hana afureo nusula talale.
The reason why I had to file a habeas corpus application was that
dalilo me yalon ko ngo safer fasongo ke wala mnyintiko.
I did my investigation but came to confirm that these two brothers were arrested, but they were not in detention in Mile 2 Central Prison, no in the NIA headquarters.
Ni aje ngo safe ka fo hani ifreo ali freo nati nga kisikisiro le ke folo ka jube fanyi mo fulolu ibe kasola le mile 2 ndata tara ko ete mile 2 kasola ndata tara fananko hani NIA la sansan kono itije.
So we weren't sure if they were alive, in fact.
Otembo bitung amang koy mambe di boko no fanyilu ye fale bang febe balurim bang mankuma koy lonje.
I filed a habeas corpus application.
Otumolo nata safero ke ifata ibe baluring hanni fata ali freo boni.
The first part of the proceeding, and that was the part on leave, was granted by the court.
Ko follow dula wala nyinti pour ila ko lanya wo kiti bunda nyim fango yoto tamandile.
You know, when you apply for habeas corpus, first you have to ask for leave.
Niye wo safer façon ke ka leave ole kaning bularo ko nying abetama la nyaming.
Then when the main application was filed, the state was served. The Ministry of Justice was served.
Birin safer ba nyim fango dunta utumole ya futandi minister bunda la meno marta kito nintilingola.
We went through the proceedings, we had the application, the trial judge sat on the decision until after the evacuation of these people to Guantanamo Bay. He refused to deliver the ruling.
Bring a waketa.
And he's a Gambian.
Member siring akito kang Gambia dingulom bari aye bang kakuta mandije asita nyin kito kanne hanu foye nyumolu muta ye samba dinkirato America la kaso jawbale mjeti kafo je Guantanamo Bay ye samba woleto.
And that was sorry, Mr. Toure, continue and then I'll ask you.
And that was not the only case.
Let me ask you questions on this particular case before we move on. Can you tell us what the lawful procedure would be for handing over of suspects, of criminal offenses from a national country to another international jurisdiction?
Faisa fono nye lua sarto ya landi nyadi le pour ka modi molam ko tumiri molam pour ka bondi banku to kata samba ka banku to silo tamande silo mo muneti ni sa fono nye.
You have to go through what we call extradition proceedings.
Foye tama silo la silo me ya lonko wolem sarto ti pour ka momuta banku kan ka di luala luani luate maka bondi banku do kan ka samba banku do kan satara be luala maroko.
And we don't have any extradition treaty with the United States.
Adun tel ning America ma wo lua façon soton da manglu tema akambenten tema.
And the procedure by which these foreign nationals, these Iraqis in particular, were actually abducted or virtually kidnapped from this country was unlawful.
Amunta silo me alongo ye wala tamu kanyi Iraqi banku dingol nyinta ke muta o silal timi alongo luanta ya sita mandre sila nyala.
Amantilim fereng anin sartolu mantanyola.
And I believe under international criminal law it would be some sort of unlawful rendition.
Amunta njikita banku ni banku tema lual me wali ala ndi nyame o nyimu kuler me alongo luanta ya samandri nyala.
You are perfectly right, but let me add this also. Even an extradition proceeding could not have availed the American government. Because these are not American citizens. Only ask for extradition in respect of your citizens.
Ikawo nyongo nyinin ka mole la ko kama memu itela banko dinguti ka fonna banko dinkari ala mutaliana tinye wala liya dinna.
So let me add this also. The Gambia government was compensated by the US government.
Gambia mansa kunda inata buluma sayo soto. America mansa kunda ye buluma sayi kafo munana yo Iraq dingulu muta ke di America mansa kunda.
Immediately thereafter,
mubutala drong.
A satellite disk, a very big one, was donated to the Gambia Armed Forces.
Inata satellite disk, walem woboli ba men katiling ali hawala ka bantala banku television channel oludundinang ite Maria yo di Gambia sojar bundala.
And I assume those are quite expensive.
Yes. Very, very expensive. When you enter the army headquarters in Banjul,
Fenda jauba ni dunta ame sojar kordato Banjul.
On the extreme right corner was where it was installed.
Ya ke buluba karola ni dunta sojar korda kono Banjul dro ya telepose buluba karola je.
That was a donation from the American government.
America man sakunda yo di wo dalilo le kan
It came after this case involving the Iraqis.
Wonata jang tumo men wotumo ye nying Iraq banku dim fulolu di America la drong wo mako ro nata.
And the NIA premises was also given a facelift.
Andung NIA korda nyim fango fanang wotembole me do ko lu keje pour ka
That was financed by the American government too.
Me alonko America man sakunda le yo fanan depansoke.
Can you tell us where you get your information from, Mr.
First of all, you said kibaro nye yeso to mindole.
There were people in the NIA who informed me.
Molo be do ko la NIA wotumo menu fanali nyin kibaro futandin tema.
I was pursuing a very sensitive case. Why am I interested in this?
Ikonyenko etebe kule noma sata kanja meya lonko kule main keta sola kuti bari munana itebe bulari nyin ko noma ngau kuma kangulu soto NIA ulubulu. And
it was the very NIA who told me that the donation to the armed forces
and that NIA
that satellite this was a compensation for the cooperation that the Gambia government gave to the US government.
O satellite o me ya di soja ro lawonya ateo NIA kilimulu itelle ko nyenko o satellite o America man sakunda ya di Gambia man sakunda la pour soja rolu pour nyin kamala ise buluma sayi dalilo me ya lon ko man sakunda sonta pour ka o mo fulolu di America la.
Same also.
Sorry to interrupt you again, but considering the unlawful nature of that assistance, would you term that compensation or bribery?
Ari hanin kabiya jube o demaro me alon ko aketa. Gambia masakunda mendi America la ni luanta ya abaketa luanta ya la kono fo esi mosi o fo non la ko ka fo ko mu gisu nyaburango te
well, you know, in terms of bilateral cooperation between nations,
Mr. Toure, let me just stop you. There was no bilateral relations in terms of extradition treaties. You've already mentioned that.
Well, you may be perfectly right. Okay, but let me come to the second case.
Let me just wrap up this case. So as far as you were concerned, this was a politically motivated case?
Certainly, of course. It was a clear aberration also of the rule of law.
And the judge in this particular case, whom you've written down on the PIS, the Protective Information Sheet, assisted in that unlawful act?
Certainly.
Jojo nyimvana kiti tela sandon ko nyime alon ko yelo to sa fe nyin kaito nyimbala jaw fanan barata barala me alon ko luanta ya baro le may menki.
Certainly, of course. And let me say again, he's a Gambian. So this idea that mercenary judges are all foreigners, it's not true.
Ha, ufamu meyo ke ufamu Gambia dingoleti. Ka foko nyin luntang kitindirla lumenu kadu ko ke kodo kan wolle doro ya kuru ya kijang hani Gambia dingolu dabi je.
What year was this case
start
over?
It's the same year when we had our NIA diamond case.
Ateo sang kilingolom biringo lulu ko kibaro dunta NIA lulu wala diamond
2003.
Ngamera sekesangoti ka fosangme 2003.
Yes.
You said you had other examples of this particular judge and his activities surrounding cases.
Yes, and I want to give you two more examples.
But before we get to counsel, but just before we get to that, let's be very clear on this point, that the transfer of the two Iraqis from Banjul to Guantanamo Bay, Gambia got in for compensation two satellite dishes, you say? And also one. And a facelift or some repairs at the NIA.
At the NIA.
Chairman kamenyin ka olem nyinti ko. Ye mem foten ko nyin Iraq dim fulolu menu ye mutajang ke sai ke di America man sakunda. Amunta Gambia man sakunda utumo man sakunda ye munafango soto je menketa wo satellite discoti sedo ko ha. Andunga manda wala ye dinkiralu sainkan doku NIA la korda kono adung America man sakunda le doku fanan dépense.
That's the allegation.
Yes.
Wolem tumiroti sedo ko ha.
Thank you. Council, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please proceed, Mr.
And then?
Second instance was the case involving Juara. Juara was charged for sedition.
Before which court?
High Court.
High Court.
We went through the trial. I'll come to the trial proper. There were violations in relation to the trial that took place in the High Court, but talking about, I'm trying to beef out the, how do I put it? In mercenary, the issue of mercenary judges, Gambians being mercenary judges, that's the element that I'm trying to beef out.
Limbali alumeno keta kito tombina olu fulal de barbitung anun ni mercenary judges ka fo nyin kitindirlal men ka kito ke kodo kan wala ko la nyan lafta fem fala woleto.
He was sentenced to a custodial, direct custodial, for 6 months.
Ya soro nyina kanko asitara sorongo kono kariworo.
Can you tell us what he was supposed to have said against the president or any of the government?
Faisa fo nanye ko sobo beje waran tumiru juma mun kuma kanne lata kan ko ay wala fo mansa kunda waran do president o mam me ya sabu ya soro.
Wara granted an interview to, I believe, the Independent newspaper.
Amunta juara kachale di kibar kaitila membeloring afaye.
The Independent or the Observer, but he granted an interview to the press.
As ke Independent newspaper ti wala Observer bari aniye kachale ke.
And in the interview, he made a statement, let's stick to the streets.
Ala kumwa kango kono ay nyina foje ko alinga finti ngambedolu muta.
That was the time when this idea of NAD was being, when NAD was in its offing.
Wato lem kube finti kang ikafome ya NAD.
What is NAD?
NAD is a political party. This was in 2006.
NAD mu politic party oleti men ne la ko fotanum 2006.
Its proper name is National Alliance for Democracy and Development.
Ato movement National Alliance for Democracy and Development. Wolem patio membelola democracy ni banku iruwando kang.
So he was a key member of NAD.
Andung atemu moleti me yalonko abe alifalle kono wo patio kono.
Because at that time he also had his own political party called NDAM.
Andu tembo afangola fansum politic patio babulu ikafome yenu wotumo NDAM.
There was something that happened in the country, so he offered an interview to the press, and in the statement he said we should go out in the streets and demonstrate.
Kule ketanum banko kang bitu dalilo kang kibar talali ya nyininka. Wodiamo konolem akomoli finti ngatam beddo kang kanna balamba ya itandi.
So the headline was, let's stick to the streets.
Amunta menketa kibaro kungoti kibar kaito bala wolem alinga finti ngam beddo lumuta.
So he was charged under Section 52 for sedition.
Bitu ya tumi bunda talulu ni fulo koto ko ay mansani mansa kundale doya.
And how was that statement supposed to be seditious?
Wokuma ka nying bekeno la doya ri kuma ka wote nyadi le.
Okay, let me come to the trial setting, what happened in the trial.
Mbatungana kito sambanya nyimfangoto kota matanya minkiti bundala. Mina kama mfuta mbina ajele nyatonto.
Let me just quickly deal with this part. He was convicted for 6 months. I filed a bail application before the Gambia Court of Appeal. And I filed a certificate of urgency. The application was argued. The matter was adjourned for ruling. And then the sitting judge sat on the ruling until after the end of Juara's sentence. The third case was the one involving Abasanyang.
You have not told us who was sitting in that court. As a single judge.
As a single judge before the Gambia Court of Appeal.
So it was an application that was heard in chambers and not...
Yes, it was an application that was heard in chambers.
And why do you feel that he acted as a mercenary judge in that particular instance?
Of course, certainly because of pressure from the executive.
amanta maluala.
Why was there pressure from the executive in this particular case?
Ita mira ro mona ya sabu de to bornang santo nyin ko kono.
Because Juara, we all know, is an opposition, as a member of the opposition, and if what he was calling the nation to do at the material time, that was going to give NAD a very big facelift. In the early days of NAD.
Juara mu opposition moleti. Ando akamen kaning wonya ningo nata ke kuti men ketanung woben nadu to bondila num bakele anu tumo nadu be wulikan ne dorong kutake.
So this would have been an activity that would have had direct influence over the power dynamics of Jame and the AFPRC.
Certainly.
Kule de meya lonko ninga ketanu abekela nu sembela kule de meya lonko abe Jame nala mul abe jindila bakele nu.
Ba kendeke. Abe toku yale silema.
The third case involved Abasanyang.
Sabanjawlem Abasanyang na kuoti.
Abba hailed from Kankuntu.
Abba bota Kankuntule.
He had aspiration to contest for the parliamentary for Fonyi Councillor.
Nyumwala nganiole tunung kaloka deputy sirango nyining Fonyi Councillor.
Can you tell us where is Kankuntu?
Kankuntu it has virtually fused with Buyam.
Kankuntu nyintembeng saying faida animbuyam sate wala kolu dunta nyokonole.
When you reach, is Buyam that's on the highway, so you have to pass through Buyam to get Kankuntu towards the river.
Buyam wala be manokang. Bari bitung nibita Kankuntu foye dum Buyam sate kono ye tilim bala ni ye Buyam banna bitu tumole sinafuta Kankuntu.
So
they've merged into one.
Bari sila ya wairi katata nyola dulala fano kang hai saying ikafuta nyoma le faketa kilinguti.
They all have their separate alcalos.
Bari beye fansung alikalo lesoto.
And that's in the Fonyis?
In the Fonyis, yes. Abba had aspiration to run for the parliamentary.
Abba nyingani lesoto kakedibite oti je.
He was a very popular youth.
Adum funding ke toborimba.
And he had a very great amount of support.
Adum mo jamale be bularing anoma nungotumo.
At first, he wanted to run for the APRC.
Follow alaftanung APRC sirango le nyinin nanung kakedibite oti.
But that was manipulated.
Bari bitung inate bulodu wokoto ya feuja ka bondia koto.
Because Kausu Jiba, the incumbent, it was believed has a close blood relationship with Jammeh. Some say he's his uncle.
Katu Kausi Jiba membe num palaso to tembo eko anin Jammeh la badi ya katata nyola le dolu kafo le fanko barin non Jammeh.
So in the power dynamics, they did not choose Abba as a candidate.
Bitun kuolu tamata nyaming inata abala kuolu landi karala imanate tombo mprai lo dipite ya nyiningula.
They didn't want him also to contest as an independent candidate.
Imalafi fanang ayelo afaye puruka dipite ya nyining.
Because the theory was that there cannot be any opposition in Fonyi.
Katu otumo ete lalano munyineti ko opposition manyan soto la Fonyi.
Especially from the president's constituency.
Sako president of Fota abota karte fai kabilo menkono.
So when they came to realize that Abba had mobilized over 3,500 voters' cards and he was poised to win,
Biri na tabo nyinkala moko. Abba efero ketle hanufo karte fairan kaito lu wuli sabanin keme lulu nyong wulu kuleti menu dunta buloko no ando ya lonko ning wolbe afaila Abba nandu niyo keta drong Abba be ganyela le birite lu bodo kalama.
The youths were determined to stand behind him no matter what.
Adum funding ke lu parete le kallo Abba koma keta kwa kundinti ba fasala.
They arrested him.
Ya muta.
Days before the nomination.
Tili danta janibe tombo ndiro kela drong ya muta.
I filed an application for bail on his behalf.
Na safero ke purisa bail atoyala.
Yeah, I give the application.
Odiamo fa ngao file ngao mensa feke purka bail ya ke diamuti.
Which court was this?
The High Court.
Kiti bunda ba fa the High Court.
Again, the same court sat, the same judge sat on the matter.
Ateo nyimo kilingo kitindirla kilingo hanimbi ateleb sita nyindom fanankang.
And refused to deliver the ruling.
Amanson kito tela.
Until after the nominations were over. So he lost the chance to contest the elections.
Which elections were these?
This was the parliamentary elections, I believe, in 2007. Because the presidential took place in 2006. The parliamentary came after it.
President Karte Fayo kira 2006 and wokola along Deputy Bun Karte Fayo na take walanna nga America kira 2007 le.
And this again, the judge assisting in the unlawful interference into the election process.
Yes. And I must emphasize, he's a Gambian.
Kiti tela nyin na dabula kula men yalon ko luanta yalem Karte Fayo nyin tamandiri nyar.
Andumbe nyim bambandila ko Gambia dingole mu.
I believe that the term mercenary judges is not the exclusive jurisdiction of foreign judges, but also Gambians participated in that process.
Mundalla nyin la ko ni ko mercenary judges amanda nyin ron ka fo luntang wala hani na Gambia dingol fanang wol fanang mosi kumandino idolu mosi kumandino
idolu idabije.
Okay. And let me emphasize that all the foreign judges who came here on technical assistance, decently in conformity with the values of the law,
amunta uliela kulu tamandi nyama sarto kang tilingu kang anintonya kang andu ye kulu ke ko inyanta kele nyami.
Certainly.
Mr.
Dabo and his co-accused persons could not have been acquitted.
Mr. Dabo ning amokotang luya ni menu tu minyola iteulu bula nola nung.
If it was not Tahir who presided over the matter at the time.
Na manke nung ko Tahir le sita akokunna nungo
Nigerian judge on technical assistance.
Wo mu Nigeria kitindirla altimenata kiti makoiro la nunyimbanko kang.
Dumo Saho and his co-accused persons could not have been acquitted.
Dumo Saho fanana la molu iteulu bula la nung ning ayatara.
If it was not Belgore who presided over the matter, a Nigerian judge.
Na manke Belgore la kitindiroti memfana mu Nigeria noti ofana yetilingu nintonya tamandi.
And that is because the judges that came on technical assistance went through the proper channels, the proper procedures, they were selected, and they were noble and proper persons, qualified and competent.
Perfectly right.
Ya tamandi tonya kang sedo ko adun wala mutonya ta keta wala nyama fana.
So I think,
and the mercenary judges, on the other hand, were handpicked and selected to do Jammeh's bidding.
Andu nying mercenary judges ole kay menu kuma de mercenary judges wol moldat men yalon ko ye tombo mol kono le pour yena ye si na kiti yol nyaati ngola jang ka kutama de men yalon ko wol betar la diaring Yaya Jammeh.
And therefore, obviously, independence and integrity was not part of their mandate. They were selected and appointed to perform a particular task, and that's what they did.
You're perfectly right.
Amunda wo kitindirlalu ye wulu tombo wo dalilo le kang pour yena ye tilimbali tamandi jang ka jammenga ni yolu timmandi sedo ko ha wolem aketa wole nyama fande.
And let me also say this, the very first 6 years of Jammeh's tenure in office, there was not one single conviction in this country.
Mba fala jammela mararo kari woro folo nyin kono hani sorondir killing manke mola nyimbanko ka.
Sorry, first 6 years.
Sanji woro follow.
Yes.
Sanji woro follow men ay mararo.
There was no one single conviction of any person who was wrongfully charged and brought before the courts.
Hani mo kilim man soto ye mentu mi tapaleya ni mfani ya kang ka marina tikiti bunda la ka kiti ndi kasorong. Hani kilim man kijawo sanji woro follow kono ala maralo kono.
At the time,
wotembo
the magistrates who manned the magisterial bench, Gambians and non-Gambians alike, that is the Nigerians who came on technical assistance, stood by the value of the rule of law. I think I can now go to Mansakonko.
Thank you very much, Mr. TOURAY. You were talking about the influence of the July 22nd movement boys in Mansakonko, and you gave an example of a case in which one of them was involved. Is there any other, can you describe more accurately what the scene was like, the environment at Mansakonko? Because this was the birthplace, I believe, of Baba Job.
Itarta no mansa ko fana no mo foka wala nyin July 22nd kam boys ol nyinti ila kan soto ka kul tamandi andu njikira nyinda ko be ko momen fokante nyimu dingiral to me ya lon ko jemu mo la wuludlade ka fo me Baba Job.
And I believe he founded that particular movement.
Andu njikira ko atele o kafo nyin law.
We have evidence that there was a lot of display of power and force
Dunga ko sedan ro moy soro janko sembe jamal be jemi alon ko wala tamandi nu jang forcé wol.
Okay, point of correction. I don't think Baba Job created July 22nd.
Baba Job le July 22nd kafo law.
You will be surprised that the people who created July 22nd, among them were lawyers.
Molu meni July 22nd kafo law. Ikono lawyer ludabije.
Was he one of the founders?
I don't know about the history of July 22nd. I may be wrong, but I don't think Baba was even a founder of the July 22nd.
July 22nd la tariko malonde bari malala ate mumoti mentata kafolo la lufangulu kono.
But he was the leader at that point.
Yes, in the power dynamics, because of financial influence as a result of the YDE, Youth Development Enterprise.
Aseke wakatawonya katu tembo sembo bitaka nyaming abelari ngole kanung aning na fulo sako wato meng atenata ke YDE la nyaton koti wolem Youth Development Enterprise.
But let me give you, many people talk about July 22nd, but they didn't know how broad-based it was.
Jamaka July 22nd la kumofo. Bari malong adumo kono fanuta nyaming menu bakono.
The July 22nd, if you work as a magistrate in those days,
July 22nd, natare mukitindri lati otilo lukono.
We are deeply involved in security operations.
Ibulobe kanton in tankada doku jamal le kononu.
In every joint security operation of the sister security institutions,
Banko kanjang security bundalu fatanta nyaming ila dokolu be sambanya.
July 22nd members will be part of that operation.
July 22nd molu dakatara wokolu konole abukake koma.
Literally across the country, wherever you have a police station,
anata findiko Bangkok mume obekang police station wala police korda be dawoda.
There were July 22nd members who were literally attached to that station.
Sinyi lonko July 22nd la molu sotontale meni ya lonko wala do ko be o police station le bala.
So they were part of all police patrols.
Itata police la do ku kono police lu ka kantaro ning dinkira taman lu menuke July 22nd dabije.
So coming to the scene in Mansakonko.
Kamurunna nkolu to menketa num Mansakonko.
It's true that Baba Job had a great deal of influence.
Tonyala Baba Job ay kangonin sembo sotonum bakede.
All right, but it's also true that the civil service was at that material time seriously being threatened by July 22nd members.
Adu tembo afnyim fananketa tonyati July 22nd la molu ya Mansakunda do kulalu jamale silandi do ku bundalu silandi.
So many people were sacked because they were reported by members of the July 22nd.
Ya mo jama bay ila do kola adu July 22nd la molu wolle kawlu la kolu fo Mansakunda e pour ye bay.
In Mansakonko,
Spangotoje,
a matter came before me.
Kunata finti kanante kang.
In fact, two matters.
Anatake kufula
one was civil, the other was criminal.
Domu monimo temaleti, domu kuruya kualti.
The criminal case was involving two gentlemen, Silamane and Seku Sedifai.
Kuruya ko nying Silamane ni Seku Sedifai wolmo fulo le dabe o kokono.
Silamane is a supporter of APRC and Seku Sedifai was a supporter of UDP.
Silamane be APRC le, Seku Sedifai wabe UDP.
Two of them fought in a public place. So the police did what was right. They charged both of them. But I don't think Silla was aware that he was himself part of the charge. Because efforts were made locally by the community leaders to plead with him to withdraw the case, but he refused.
But and
what was the charge?
They were charged for affray.
Ye 2 minutes ko Italia du nyolo le ke jama bundala.
So the matter came before the court.
Kunyi nata kiti bundala.
We read the charge to him.
Nga tumiro memfota nga okarangaye.
And when it was interpreted to him that the two of you fought in a public place,
Biriye akanna sora enko alimo fulo keleta dinkiralto dame mu jama madulati.
his reaction was dismissive.
Ay konyi mfango jabi nyaminga muntela kwa mamuta fenti fang.
He said the police were not stating the right thing.
Ako police lumantara tonya fokang.
That he gripped Seku, raised him high up and smashed him on the ground and he sat on him.
Kafokate Seku
his
chikale.
reaction.
Ayo boyindi duma sita wakang. Wala ketala kumoti.
So he, in effect, pleaded guilty to the charge without realizing it.
Woto amunta waira te fongo le dayo fo. Woto lua ya tele mutako atele to nyendiroke. Bara te fongo hakilo mo beje nu woto mo.
We also asked Seku. Seku also gave the same version. So each one was so in bravery.
Biringa Seku fana nyininka. Seku fana saita okuma kilingu le kang. Ko Seku ate sila ya fo nyaminga. Amunta ibebe jusu bengo le itandikang.
So I convicted both of them.
Woto nge mo fulo be sorong.
Then when the word went around that Silamane of APRC was convicted, large chunk of APRC supporters came to court.
Birinyin kumo findita ko Silamane membe APRC pati okono ya kitindile lua ya muta. APRC la mojamal wulita menu nata kiti bunda.
They came in their gears, APRC mufflers, t-shirts, whatever.
Biribina ye parele de APRC asobiolu adondikolu a t-shirtolu a kaminindangolu ye wolle dunginata.
I asked them out of the court. I said I wasn't going to allow party coloration within the precinct of the court.
Nkoye finti banda.
Drove them out.
Nge bayi katunte ko parti la kulute tamala nyim kito bunda la jang. Nge bayi banda.
So whilst we were, FRI again intervened.
Kote ke FRI ya dabula
He
ukuoko.
said another charge should be leveled against Seku alone.
Akoye nyanta Seku da manne tumila.
That is for idle and disorderly.
Puru we ku kension ning ku kebalo leke.
Whilst I was sitting over that,
Birimbe siring wokunna.
I understand the governor's office was being, there was a lot of pressure coming from the office of the president to the governor in Mansakonko.
Nata nyimfanam fahamu ko. President la office be governor la office tonton kanne puru isikolu tamandiko ite lafta la nyame.
Hoping that they can do whatever.
Ye nyinjiki ko mendiate telie wala nyanta kela.
Can you tell us what that means?
They thought maybe the governor could prevail on me to do otherwise and get Silla out of the hook.
Itelenyi mira ko governor bente sondino la lewandla kante falin ka yelemandi puru ntesi Seku damantumi ka kuola wokang satara Silla botaje.
But in any event, nobody came to me. And I must also commend the governor at Mansakonko at the time, one Joseph Jassy. I must commend him. He's a decent character. I worked with him. He's a very decent character.
Yo adum itelenyi ne mira nunko bente hele mandilale ngala itelikang. Bari governor membije mbaja ila bake ka fome Joseph Jassy molem men tilinta aseneata ndunene na edo kokele. Ima ate falinno ima yele mandino.
And how did you come to know about the events that happened with the governor?
Well, the police informed me because the prosecutor who was handling the matter was victimized.
Police le fango nata kumonyi mfanye. Katu kobe police mem fango buloko no kito nyintanya inata duno la ofango kang.
And can you just tell us in general what the behavior was of APRC members or members of the July 22nd members at Mansakonko during that time, especially when they were involved in criminal cases or suspects in criminal cases?
APRC Green Boys warando anyolo inolankol ila ba manya nyika kenu nyadi le kujau barola karola o mafangolo wato laje ikakenu nyadi.
It was just not in Mansakonko.
Amanka Mansakonko da mandi.
July 22nd was all over the country.
July 22nd ila umanya be banko karobele.
And they enjoyed an absolute air of impunity.
Andungo tumo kubuka kela iyo kuruya ko kenyaunya ndi nyama femfem buka boji.
And where did that impunity stem from?
Ilo ku jaul ka ke kubuka na fintije okabona mintole.
Because they were literally part of the executive.
Any particular person in the executive?
Let me give you this disclosure. Apart from the cabinet that was lawfully constituted, there was an invincible cabinet of July 22nd members. If you talk to the people who were very close to the July 22nd, especially the higher echelons of the network, they will tell you that the only reason why the government during the transition was not penetrated especially influential so-called big men, why they couldn't penetrate the Jammeh system was because July 22nd had a screening network inside State House.
July 22nd, ye korosirlalu ninkulo sungol lesoto State House fangokono menu katara korosiro ninjubero ning kullo no masatola.
Who would give the president advice on the antecedents of every person who was a major functionary during the PPP era.
Meya lonko wolle kata molla kibaro lu be fo jammeye menu keta nyaton kol nim place tioluti menu sako menu tata num PPP la wuche okono.
So it was a very powerful movement.
Ola kende kafusembe ma balem July 22nd utumo.
And that was because they were linked directly to Yaya Jammeh himself.
Yes, of course.
And that air of impunity basically was because they were above the law, essentially, just like their boss. That
was the order of the day.
Can you give us just one or two more examples of cases that you had before your courts where some APRC members appeared and this air of impunity was properly displayed?
For hanin kabe fesi misal killing warandom fula dinna meya lonko keta kuja baro le meya lonko inate nyati lono tumala mena munun kiti telati ko wato laje diamond ya lonko nying FRC mol narana dunta je baro ke bari hanin kabi luaye boy bari kuma na finti la court.
Yes, there was a civil case that was filed before the court in Mansakonko.
Moni motema kito sotonte mendundi Mansakonko kiti bundala.
There was this NGO based in Mansakonko called GADA.
Doku bunda benu Mansakonko je kafome ye GADA.
It was headed by one Kebaba at the time.
Meya doku bunda nyaton kaya utumwe kafaye ne Kebaba.
GADA filed, first they gave microcredit loans to women in Jara West.
Ika musolu makwenu Jara tilijiola je ke donto kodola menketa nying safar bundandin tioluti puru ke makoi.
There was a particular disbursement that was given to women in Soma in particular.
Ina takodo ta fananka makoiro di musolu la meya lonko aketa Jara Soma sateoto.
But these loans that were given to these ladies, the funds were actually mobilized from Village Development Trust Fund. This was a government project. GADA solicited funding from Village Development Trust Fund.
And when
money was given to them, they disbursed it to the women in Soma. The ladies refused to pay. One among them was the chairwoman of APRC in Soma. Called Nato Sediba. NATO mobilized all the women that because they are APRC members, they shouldn't pay the money. So because they defaulted, GADA could not pay the loan to Village Development Trust Fund.
Wairi telu balanta kodo jola. Gada fana mang kodo nyin kafuno nyoma ibe meng cha tala ka sai sate ulla yirwa kodo ma ya bondi dameng.
A Village Development Trust Fund instituted an action against Gada before me in Mansakonko.
Bitung wo nafulu bunda sate ulla yirwa ni kodi nafulu bunda ulfanale nata Gada samani kito nyin nata nyati lingula.
I gave them judgment and we executed the judgment. Gada was compelled to pay.
Nga kito nyin tamandi nyame nga kito nyin te adungalo ndi nyele kanko Gada iteli nyanta ukodo jola le.
The executive, I think the board of directors of Gada
insisted
that they must take action against the women to recover the monies from them.
So wolfanal natalo nyine kan woto ibe kuwulindila o musolu kamale menu balanta kodo jola ye donto menna puri fanal si kodo soto ibe men jola.
They filed civil claim against them. They came to court. They all accepted liability. And we gave judgment to Gada. But Nato told me right in the face of the court that I was only wasting my time. They were not going to pay those monies. I told her I wouldn't react. Told her we have had many of those kind of statements from litigants. It is my duty to give judgment and it's my duty to enforce the judgment also. So Gada came back, they filed an application for JDS, judgment debtor summons.
Bitungada murutanang inata samanindiro ke puru kango mengalondi wonya julola jo puru ase sabati ayelo.
We went through the proceedings again.
Ndunta kuolu kono koteke.
And Nato again told the court, he told me in open court, look, Mr. Magistrate, you are wasting your time. We are not paying these monies.
Ateo Nato kilingolota kitibunda nyatilingola kafoko le magistrate ikela watu le tinyantel tenyin kodo jola.
I told her, Madam, I would not be agitated by your statement.
Madam, we
will do what is lawful at the relevant time. So when we concluded the proceedings, I issued a warrant for their arrest and committal in prison in Janjambure. When they were arrested and brought to Summer Police, July 22nd members and APRC supporters got up, reported the matter to Baba Job.
July 22nd la molu aning APRC kolu wulta ikafuta nyoma yekonyi kusamba kafo Baba Job.
They concocted a big lie.
Yefania basiti.
That it was Kemeseng who came to me.
Ko Kemeseng
Jame, the then MP, the area MP.
Watembo Kemeseng Jamalem Tundo la dibitoti Yefania basiti ko le natan tekang.
Sorry, they said Kemeseng directed the police to go and arrest the women in their rice fields, and they have been arrested in like numbers, and they have been brought to police station, and they were being detained inside the cell.
Yenyim faniale city ko Kemeseng yenyin kango di police lula pour kata musolu bayndi la mani farolu kono ke mutaji ke nati ke soron police la selo lukono.
So they spoke with the then Interior Minister Major Bojang.
Wotembo ini minister dia muta memmarta banko kankunya la Major Bojang.
So Bojang directed the police to suspend the execution of the warrants till the following morning.
Bojang nata kango di police la ko waranto me yenyi musolu muta ya dem follow hanufo asamo.
But it came at a time there was a very responsible officer commanding the police, one Mr. Njai, I've forgotten his first name.
Barotembo aninkule bentame yalonko mole mentilinta abala duko tamandikang Mr. Njai membe police la karola utumo.
He was the officer commanding police training school for many years.
Atelo moti memmarta police la karambu la police karambu nying andung atartaje sanji jama.
Then he was transferred to Mansakonko.
A
very decent character and a highly responsible police officer.
Mo senung adung mole meyala dokuo bunya ayala dokuo no atilinta.
In the morning he came to my office in Mansakonko
anatana office to Mansakonko
to make inquiries as to how the warrants were issued.
Purka nyinin ka roke o waranto lumeyo musolu muta yedi nyadile.
I confirmed to him that the warrants were issued by the court.
Nga tilindia e kabay nyoto kotonya kiti bundale yo waranto ludi.
He said the Interior Minister spoke with him, but he had no idea about the matter.
Ako minister me marta banko kan kunya la wole dia mutate ye andu nga tebeda me ate Mr. Njai amankulu kalangolo membe keri nuotumo.
I asked him to give me the number for the Interior Minister.
Nkaye minister fangola nomba dinna me marta banko kan kunya la Interior Minister.
I called him.
Nga kumandi.
I asked if he was the one who suspended the operation of the execution of the warrants. He said yes.
Nga nyini nkafo itele ye kango di bang warrant kaito nyinyanta tamala nyami itele ya kuo demfolo ka bay bang ako ha.
Who was the Interior Minister at that time?
This was Major Bojang.
Ni kafo le nu Major Bojang.
I told him he has no business to interfere with due process.
Nga ye nyimankete la dokute andu ila hajuteng purke dabula kiti bunda la kuo lutamandoto.
Explain the entire story, how Village Development Trust Fund instituted an action against GADA, the action we have taken in that.
Nga kuobe sata e kabwa nyoto nying sate ula irua na fulubunda nying ye GADA samani nyaming aning muna na ye GADA samani kuo keta nyaming aning GADA fanaludula nga ube ba nyoto.
And the second case, which was instituted by GADA against the women.
Aning kufulanja o GADA fananata musolu samani tumomeng.
I told him if the party, APRC party, is embarrassed by the arrest of the ladies, then let the party pay the money, but those warrants will be executed.
Nka na tara nyi musolu muto keta APRC party we maloti. Woto ya kodo nyinjo, wairi nyi musolu betele la party okono.
So he kept quiet over the matter.
Biringo fired wrong, ayede kuala utumo.
I told him, I said, please inform the authorities above that we are proceeding to execute these warrants.
Nka ya woto menu be santo. Ifana yin kibaro folie ko nyin waranto luntelebe o kangol le tamandi kangbe wala silono
that we will commit them in prison if they don't pay the money.
Kombe mutalale nge sambaka sola ni manyin kodojo.
What was the outcome of the case?
I believe that was the very day they paid the money.
Na mera ulum fangolo menata kodo nyinjo
because they had no choice.
Gatu fere do tebulu.
So that was a classic case again of APRC members displaying impunity in the face of the court and political interference in the judicial system, but it did not actually work this time.
No, it would not work before me.
Ate tamano lante nyatilingola.
But let me also add this.
Mbenyim fanan la falaje.
See, when we were going through the transition from the military to the civilian administration,
wato membe falingu tamande kan kabo sojar mararo kono kata civilian mararo kono.
There were people who had their own individual issues.
Molu soto ntameye ifansun kunkuolu soto.
They were involved in criminal behavior and they were charged.
Andu ye kruya ko leke dabe kruya ko lukono ye tumi.
They use politics as a cover.
Inata den de politiko koma
joined partisan politics and lobbied to become APRC MPs.
Andu inata kata puruke mabo politiko koma
because
ye kolu nyininke no masata puruka ke APRC la député
yes, they did so as to get impunity so that they would not be prosecuted.
Yo dunke nyine kama ni keta député oluti APRC patiwe isaje kute bolela koto andu
mote
kitindila. Katu killing sotonta ko nyinkono.
Churchill Balde. Misappropriated funds in Action Aid.
Ay kodo luta Action Aid.
Matter was reported to police in Bansang.
Ya ko kibaro di police la Bansang.
It was thoroughly investigated.
Ya ko kisi
there was evidence against him.
Adun sede koyo nata fintimenti.
He was charged by the police.
Police ya charge ya tumi.
When the file reached the Ministry of Justice,
bring kito a file of the Minister Bunda la menu marta
tili compromise and his name was removed.
Ya konyi landi wonya ya to fangu mume ole bondije.
I give you another case.
Do fanan sotonda.
Wandi
Dabo.
A chief in Bureng. Dumbuto.
Me alonka keta C14 in Dumbuto.
Wandi misappropriated a lot of funds.
Wandi kodi jamale ta kodo me manke atati.
Where was Dumbuto?
Dumbuto is in Lower River region.
Dumbuto be mansa konko tundo le kang.
It's in Kiang.
Abe Kiang banko le kang.
He's late now.
Ate fango bantale sa inde.
He misappropriated a lot of funds from assistance that was being given to Dumbuto village by a twin village from the United Kingdom.
Wotumo dumbuto ye fulandi nyoma sate le soto menu be England. Katu wairi ye nyin sate fulolu fulandi yale ulukama ko irbale di dumbuto la kodola karola. Bari wo kodolu menu kana between afan wandi dabo ya afan muna fan wo kodol lela.
He misappropriated a lot of resources that were sent.
Ay kodi jamata me ya lonko ye kinang.
Abdullah Koli,
Abdullah Koli,
also a civil servant,
the
cousin brother of Wandi,
at a Wandi Sanau Dokole Moti,
stood up with some of his friends
and
reported the matter to the police.
Kakuokibaro di police
It was investigated.
Ya kisi.
There was evidence against Wandi.
Adun sede koyo sotonta Wandi la kolo.
Wandi uses membership of the July 22nd.
Wandi July 22nd kafudi ya leta
as Churchill did.
And
compromise the case at the level of the Ministry of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toure, for those examples. Indeed, membership of the FPRC was immunity against prosecution, as you have shown, because unfortunately, not everybody could be brought before your court. So that's how it went.
There were so many glaring examples. I just cannot remember them all now because of the passage of time.
And indeed, there was another case that you told us about where you had a clash with the military at Farafenni whilst you were traveling magistrate there. Can you just tell us more about that?
Yes, do fana beje me alon ko ya misalo dina jam me men soto aro mun magistrate de Farafenni ini sojaro le sey nyolo men soto fo isi kuma fo no nyewoto ba.
Before that incident, all these issues were building up. So the executive they weren't pleased with my work as a magistrate.
Wotumo kuolu be kalaka nyoka be laka nyoka bitakang. Yo adung ntaka doko kenu nyamin yara man sakunda nyaton ko lumantara sewori ntela doko sambanyala karola.
So they had an eye on you.
Yes,
and that was because you were actually doing your job.
Yes. The fact of the matter was that none in the executive could directly confront me to say, do this case in this way.
Kadu otembo ntebe kolu keka nyaming mo mantara itella nyaton kolu kono men silo nonte nyati lingula ka fonyenko ha lafta le yin kolu keteng.
But there was a lot of interference on the ground.
Bari dumala ika kujama leta mandi purka kuntuntela do ko nyato.
I was in Farafenni when the case of Kemes and Jame came before me.
Benum Farafenni birin Kemes and Jame la kolu natan nyati lingula.
5 of them were charged.
Imolulo yete letumi.
Kemes and Jame. Siaka
Sonko.
Seni Sabali. Jenun
Sanyang.
And Malik Seka. They were all UDP supporters.
It will be UDP in Koleti.
They arrested them and brought them before me. And they published all their names under the detention of persons decree. They published their names in the detention orders.
And sarto kanko ulmumol letimeni alonko nyante mutala le koyo decree men dadanu ke mutamol la karola yetelbe to safe wala kono.
They said they were a threat to the security of the state.
Iko ulmumol letimeni alonko lafta banko la kanto nin tankadale tinyala.
Was that under decree number 3?
Yes. Decree number 3 was
military personnel.
Security personnel, but there was another decree which actually applied generally against civilians.
Decree 3 wo tilinta service la police army ananyo do kotangulu. Bari decree do fana mbije me yalonko yo kono fanundile wo momondi si manole wala.
I think to be more specific,
ngamera puruka ala senayando tamindi janna.
Let me give you the name of the decree because I have it here.
And I know you've been referring to some of the decrees. Perhaps if you could make some copies available to us.
I will.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I know that we are way past our lunch break time, but I just want Mr. TOURAY to finish with this matter, and then we will take the break and then come back. Thank you.
It's okay, let me proceed. I'll be going through, let me proceed.
Yes. So you can provide that information to us later on.
Later, much
Thank
obliged.
you.
Much obliged. So they were arranged before me. At the material time, Kemeseng was poised to contest for one of the constituencies, I believe Jara West constituency in LRD.
Watu maybe na tilante nyatilingo la watumo Kemeseng fanga pareta lola dipite ya nyingo la ngamira Jara tiliji mansa konko tundo kanji ya laftakila wala dipite wote.
And Siaka Sonko was the head of the UDP security.
Alun Siaka Sonko le mu UDP la kanto ni ntankada nyato nkoti watumo.
And Seni Sabali was the younger brother of the former vice president Seku Sabali.
Alun Seni Sabali mu nunto vice president o doma leti kafome nun Seku Sabali.
So these were the people who were put together, they were arrested and charged and brought before the court.
Nyilo moliti menu be muta ye kafunyoma ye tumi ye nati kito nyati lingula.
And they published their names in the detention orders.
Andu ye tolu safe dinkirato kamuta molu to safe dameng.
And they actually brought these detention orders and tendered them in evidence before the court.
Andu ye nyin to safe ngulunati le fananke fintindi ko sede ko le molti kiti bunda fango nyati lingula de.
But notwithstanding all that,
bari wolu be la lanya fanang
I gave bail to all of them.
Nate be bail.
Juju Fadera, who was the prosecutor,
Juju Fadera memmu kitindir latinu
was victimized.
Yasembo late kang.
That was also a very common trend. If you cannot victimize the magistrate, you victimize the prosecutor. So all that setting in North Bank LRD was what actually brought me in conflict with the army in Farafenye.
Wokuolu be lanya ninga tanya membe keka numansa konkotundo kanteka kuolu samba nu nyaming wole natake kamwali oti nteni sojaro lutema.
Can you tell us how you came to grant bail in that case? Because you've already explained the fact that most magistrates or judges felt that their hands were tied since they couldn't grant bail in these cases.
Kadu yenyi mfonye nunkoma do kiti tela jamal beje meng yalan ko dumalan ko nga nin santolan ka kiti tela wulka jama nin tumiri sifal nate nyati non lay tol kam men fola nyindi ko bulol be detere ne nying ite bail dino la molla men yalan ko ye tumi nyim fannala.
Because by virtue of decree number 1, I believe the constitution was still suspended.
Decree number 1 ni sujita wala han kabi constitution en mem loi bu ko ba nyindi kaw jenken di karala ike nyati den decree nyin ya mem fo ikatama wala.
How did you work your way around that?
Sa ite nata na kol tamandino nyadi la fo nata na bail di nyim molla.
You are perfectly right. I remember the late Martin Mendy when the decrees were tendered in evidence before me.
Yeto nyale fong hakilo ye momutai ka fo me Martin Mendy wato me yin decree sarto lunati ke landi nyati lula.
He was the defense counsel for these 5 gentlemen.
Nyummo lulo atelmu loyati mello tanum woliye.
Those were his exact words. He said, "Your worship, your hands are tied."
Ala kuma kang fango memfo ay memfo a fango da wole mnyinti your worship e bulolo be sitirinne.
I said to him, "No, my hands have never been tied. Me, I'm a free man."
Ngai hani nte bulolo nena man siti nte mu moleti membe mfambulu.
If you look at the decrees,
there
were porous, there were ways and means people can maneuver them and grant bail to the accused persons.
Niolu jube belari nyaming amunta ibe mantara sembering fenna. Ni me keta motiye fon kalangolong isi silo tamandinole ye janke ite lawliye wala ye salang ye tilingu tamandi kawo molu bula.
I mentioned in the earlier part of my testimony that I worked with Magistrate Onya. We had discussed the content of the decrees and the weakness. So I wrote a bail ruling of 22 pages.
Nga bail sarto kaito dada me ya lonka tata kaiti lera muang animfula.
And the government was stunned to realize that, in fact, notwithstanding the enactment of these decrees, they came to realize that, in fact, there was room for detainees to be granted bail.
Biringa wasafe hanufa kaito futata moluma anyanta futala menuma biri ya jube foye bandi itala fangolo nata jako yo yara ferol ne silolu be keri ne molu simenu tano loyal simenu tano pour ka molu bel satara nyin sartolu hanni be lori nyawnyande nyin dikriolu isi molu bel no le akono.
And that was why I said in the early part of my testimony that if the case of Pasala had was given to me at the very onset, I was going to grant them bail.
Wala nanganyim fo komando nunko Pasala la case ni adina nunjuna wato menga findita kutake konga funu nyaming mba bail lalnu.
So you use these gaps in the law in favor of protecting fundamental human rights and the rights of victims.
Certainly, because the whole motivation why these people were charged was simply because they didn't want them to participate in the campaign. That was all.
Dalilo
membe have done.
Dalilo membe lari nyimbe kwa mawale nyimolu mamfemfenke ilaftale nundorom purka uludabo ndi kampenyo to kampenyo kanake nyala.
As a progressive magistrate, you were able to see the substance of that rather than the technicalities of the law.
This is it. So we granted bail.
Amunta council kaya amunta ite ko lulanya jibe yesilo luje meni alonko sila tilindi ngolo mo simenu tano kanyimolu kanandi siedo kaya ha wala nanga bail dila.
But the day following, they were rearrested.
Bari asamo ina tanyimolu senka muta koteke.
I remember the master called me,
Nakilo baka
master of the High Court.
Master member High Court, I am commanding telephone.
Told me, Borrry, do you know what has happened?
Akonya Borrry munayalo ne menketabang.
Told him no.
Nkai hani.
Said, do you know that the people who granted bail in Farafenya were arrested?
Akonya munayalo ne koe molu e bail di molu menu la Farafenya yesa inka mutale.
Told him he should be ashamed of telling me that.
Nkai nyinyante ete fango malulale purite yo fonte.
Because if I was master of the High Court,
I wasn't going
to allow any person who was granted bail by court duly constituted by law to be rearrested by the police. So he said, I must realize that this is a military dispensation.
Ako ayenja abi mena wala mnyenti ko etenya ntanyi njelala ko sojar kamule betama kambe sojar olutumole kono.
I told him I will do what is right under any given circumstance.
Nkayen mentilin tatonya mu menti ntebe tamala wolela kuwo kundimbe keri nte ujubela mbetilin nintonyale tamandila.
So and after you granted the accused persons bail, they were rearrested. Did they come back to you?
Biring ite bail di nyimola fo inara na imura kotange fo inara ne inyati lingola kotange.
No, the case did not proceed. It was an empty file. So when they were arrested, even the state was not interested in pursuing the matter.
Nyimu ila file mu file kolongoleti fenteje. Wala na birina tesa inka muta kota kebirinte ngebel akuonyi manna ata hani man sakunda fango manna sola soto akuonyi noma sato wala kota ke.
So what happened was that when it was the parties were asking to prepare for the parliamentary elections in 1997. Yes, this was 97.
Bilmenna atake otumo watu memolu be pare kampuruki karte fayo membena la nung 1997 sangokono ibo parenduro ke kantumo menna.
The UDP party leader said UDP was not going to participate in the elections.
UDP party nyatonko otumo la lota ko UDP te dabula la karte fayo to.
Because according to him,
katu kwate yafo nyaming
one of his candidates who was lawfully granted bail by the court was rearrested unjustifiably by the security.
Kato alamolu kono mo kilimbije me yalonko yala kosa mbakiti bunda la kiti bunda tilini unata amari bula. Babiri abula enata sembota kanye mari sa inkamuta kotake.
Who was the UDP party leader?
Mr. Usainu Dabo.
Council kai jumalon UDP party nyaton koti sedo kai Mr. Usainu Dabo.
And the IEC chairman then Gabriel Roberts.
Otembo Gabriel Roberts atelom IEC la sirantioti.
Of blessed memory.
Me alonko tambitale.
He's alive? My apologies. My frank apologies. Yes. Gabriel Roberts then also took a position that if KMSN was not released, they are not going to continue to conduct elections.
Gabriel Roberts fana natalo lamuta ko ni manke mesembula ite carte fayo tamandila telefonal te kukela.
So the government was therefore compelled to release them unconditionally.
Bitung wala nata kende mansakunda mamfere do soto inata nyimolu bula e mankula kan.
And that was the end of the matter.
Andun ko nyimbanta wala nyama fereng.
But despite the fact that they were released and eventually participated in politics, but what did that do to the general voters, you know, who wanted to vote for UDP, for example, in terms of creating fear and intimidation?
Ani kabigo nyao ya nyarande nyama inarana nyimulta ye bula puri ye dabula karte fa nyindo ye dabula je. But sa jamar hamano nyim men ya lonko UDP kanun tele andu wole nying hamosro no purga karte fa UDP ma. Silo nying maslango nying na taro kono okera no nyadi le fi. A
lot of people were arrested and detained and people were brutalized, but that did not scare the opposition.
Ye moja ma mutanu ye dolu fangulu mutake tilimbali ya katajire ya kuolu kela ke isorong bari wama molu saliang ama molu murundi ko.
Because I remember even after the presidential elections, a lot of people were charged and they were actually arraigned before me in Farafenye.
Katung hakilo baka hani president karte fayo bota la tumomeng ye moja ma muta inate itumi kane londi ntefango nyati lungu la Farafenye.
In election related violence.
Me ya lonko atilinta karte fay kunya lu fitino
I
lela.
frankly told the police that I was not going to hear the case.
Me nyine fo police le kenebato konteta kito tala.
Because what happened was that they paraded them on the television and made conclusions that these were the people who vandalized vehicles and assaulted people and all that.
Kanyum fanam foje ko nyileye motolu tinya nyileye boyin kandirolu ke nyileye tajire ya kolu ke yofo ila kuoto television oto.
So I told them that they have passed judgment over the case. And if they want to proceed with them, let them get another magistrate to hear the matter. But that case, I wasn't going to sit over it.
So what eventually happened to those cases?
Following here adjourned date, they came and withdrew the case.
It
should also be stated there was a lot of fear in the government. Most people didn't realize it. There was a lot of fear in the government. When you take a position, especially when you're a judicial officer, many a times they will capitulate.
And I know that you've said that the opposition, perhaps as an institution or the head, senior members, were not, they were not intimidated. However, the ordinary people of the party, the ordinary voters, I'm sure must have been intimidated in the sense that they did not want to end up like their leaders in jail, being tortured, and all of that. So it must have done something to prevent them either from voting or supporting the party. It must have had some adverse effects.
Well, that's true. One of my own cousin sisters had a miscarriage.
Because in the
1996 presidential election campaign period,
1996 President Karte Fayo campaign
the army was openly engaged in attacking innocent civilians. So many people were brutalized. Resulted to a lot of human rights violations. Yes.
And we all know that the commander-in-chief of the army at that time was the president himself.
Yes, of course.
Mr. TOURAY, I think we'll have to stop here because it's over. We've gone over our time for the lunch break. We'll come back and continue to the military checkpoint issue and other matters.
Much obliged.
Mr. Chairman, I hand over the witness to you.
Thank you very much, my counsel, and thank you, Mr. TOURAY. One quick question before we take our lunch break.
Yes.
You had mentioned the involvement of lawyers in the establishment or creation of the July 22nd movement.
Yes.
Nyim foko lawyer lu sotonta le menu dabe nyin kono bribe July 22nd kafo lola lawyer lu sotonta le menu dabe o kafo londo kono.
What was the nature of their involvement? Were they just lawyers participating in an institution, or they were the guys who advised the members of the July 22nd movement on how to go about establishing a legal entity, if it was indeed a legal entity, or were they retained as service lawyers for
No,
Nyilula dabulo keta nyadi le tel tafta molle kono men ka yama men ya marolu di ka folo nyoyala wala itarta kulu kono men ya longolem ka fota mandoti wala ila taro ko nyin kono aketa nyadi le.
They were pioneer members, and they didn't join the July 22nd merely because of their legal expertise.
Nyilu molle ti men ya lonko ete leketa mo folo luti akwo nyin kono. E mandu nje nyin kama ka fo lawyer ya londo le ya sabude.
And as a matter of fact, I'm a member. I'm a lawyer. I'm a member of the Gambia Bar Association.
Kani ajube ndefa mu lawyer le ti ndube Gambia la lawyer kafuba nyin kono.
But the hard truth of the matter is that it's regrettable. But the hard truth of the matter is that some of the biggest enablers of Gambia we are lawyers.
Bari koto nyaning a bero fang momenti. Mo jamalu soton tamenu keta jamme mako irlalu ti dumala. Lawyer lem.
It's very unfortunate.
Aketa ku kebaloti drong.
Yes. Why he was able to perpetuate himself in power, get himself consolidated. At every stage, he had lawyers who were loyal to him, who gave him advice.
Ni aje watu be aya fam bambandi no ka sulo dum mansakunda mararola karola ka fang ke nyin kubati molu kunna loyal lebe je menu ka ya mari.
Thank you very much, Emma. We will take a break for lunch and come back at 3 o'clock. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Gambia may be the smallest country in Africa, but it will host the second largest gathering of world leaders in